to 1 year ago when angry Sri Lankans stormed the president's residence after months of civil unrest, toppling its former leader, Gotabaya Rajapaksa. And months prior, the country defaulted on its $46 billion foreign debt, plunging the country into chaos. With no money left for imports, people were left to endure widespread food, fuel, and medicine shortages. Inflation skyrocketed in the meantime. Sri Lanka in the preceding years saw government debt balloon as policymakers pursued an unusual strategy of printing money while capping exchange and interest rates for the sake of growth. Now, a year on, the crisis appears to be easing, but only slightly. Inflation remains high at 12% last month, and that's after peaking at nearly 70% in September. The International Monetary Fund, which granted the country a $3 billion bailout in March, says the economy's shown some signs of improvement, but painful reforms are still needed. For more, Asanga Abeyagoonasekera joins us. He's Senior Fellow at the Millennium Project and also Technical Advisor at the IMF. Asanga, thank you for your time. I want to pick up on that last point that I said there in the lead-in. Tough steps already being taken to address major economic issues. What's your take on this? Is Sri Lanka on the right track? And what economic policies or reforms are still missing, you think?
Well, definitely the country is on the right track when you're looking at the economic policies. The prudent measures taken by the present president, Ranil Wickremesinghe, and the IMF, the 2.9 billion definitely gave a lifeline to the Sri Lankan economy to come back to stability. And you can see some sort of stability. I mean, we had 70% inflation rate last year, so 12% right now. You have a 30% rise in the tourism income. Then the remittances have also increased, 76% jump. So, and also the reserves, 14-month high, you can see 3.5 billion. So you can see all these indicators showing that Sri Lanka kind of evaded a Zimbabwean type or a Venezuelan type hyperinflation. So the country is kind of moving into stability, and you would be able to see some sort of growth maybe in the next quarter.
All right. Well, Colombo is negotiating with creditors to agree a debt restructuring program by September. This is dominating parliamentary conversations a lot. Sri Lanka's total debt stands at around $80 billion. Talk to us about the biggest challenge in repaying the loans.
Well, one of the biggest issues is the debt restructuring. So the China factor is the main issue here. India and Japan and the other countries of the Paris Club has agreed on to come to some sort of debt restructuring, but China has been sort of delaying the process. There has been kind of Chinese lobbying going on in Sri Lanka when Sri Lankan officials going to China, as well as Chinese officials coming to Colombo and talking about new loans. And Sri Lanka has to be extremely careful in borrowing more for unsustainable projects. We had lavishary projects and also the corruption, the conspicuous corruption issues of the previous regime. So it has to be extremely careful taking this the prudent economic measures and also sort of working out debt restructuring, but China has been sort of slow in the process, so there's not been much discussion on that.
What progress has been made in implementing reforms to address corruption, as you mentioned, transparency, and even accountability in the government?
Well, the government has been sort of producing a new act, the Anti-Corruption Act, which is, I would say, one of the most important acts, because almost all of the protesters were talking about the rampant corruption in the country, as well as the autocratic rule, that sort of the family rule that crippling the entire democratic space of Sri Lanka. So Wickremesinghe has been sort of taking measures to sort of bring back democratic norms as well as, but there has been several acts such as the Anti-Terrorism Act as well as the Broadcasting Act, which is to reduce the democratic space, which is kind of disturbing. I mean, we're looking at those acts. So, definitely it's a progress from Rajapaksa's time, which is, highly autocratic regime, and moving into sort of more pragmatic measures and sort of, but Sri Lanka has been also delaying elections. I mean, we were supposed to have elections in March, the local elections, so there's been delay in that, and the human rights issue. So all of this is a concern. So the protesters' demands are still there. Corrupt has to be punished, as well as the human rights and accountability. The government has to take it very seriously.
So, Asanga, the former president and his brother, they fled a year ago, but they're now back living on the island, and then some members of their cabinet have been reinstated. There isn't quite a new political culture. Could that open up more wounds later on?
There's been a sort of a trend of coming back with the Rajapaksas because of the support that they have received, as well as the safety that they have been received from the Wickremesinghe, the present president. And the Wickremesinghe depends on the SLPP, the Sri Lanka Podujana Party, the Rajapaksa, the political party in the parliament, because the majority is controlled by the Rajapaksas. So I think the problem of the Wickremesinghe, he's been prime minister for 6 times. The problem is that he's always taken out by the ultranationalist political, I would say, the movements created by the Rajapaksas. So there's been, it's been a sort of a new case actually, where Wickremesinghe is working with the Rajapaksas and providing them also safety. But when the reports such as the corruption, the diagnostic reports which is coming out on corruption, as well as how would Wickremesinghe address these issues, will be a concern.
All right, thank you very much for that. He's got a lot on his hands also to handle ethnic and social harmony issues, which he has promised to solve by December this year. Let's see how that one goes. Asanga Abeyagoonasekera, thank you for your insight. Senior Fellow at the Millennium Project and Technical Advisor at the IMF. Ahead.